first thing is not to be alarmed. It isn't your fault that fungus gnats got to your plants. They happen sometimes, it's just part of nature. And the good thing is it's pretty easy to treat. So the first thing we want to do is to make sure that we're not overwatering our plants. So fungus gnats, the adult form of them, is the bug that kind of annoys us. They aren't harmful to our houseplants, but what they do is they lay eggs in the top layer of soil in plants, and especially in plants that are really wet. So don't overwater your houseplants, be consistent with your moisture, and allow them to dry out in between. Makes that soil not hospitable for the adults to lay their eggs. If you do need to treat the problem, our go-to treatment is going to be neem oil. Mix up a spray, spray the leaves, tops and bottoms to deter the adults from coming to the plant, and then spray the top of the soil as well. And hopefully with 2 applications a week, over time you'll see those fungus gnats go away from that particular plant. Make sure that you isolate the plant so that it's not spreading the gnats to others, and if it's really a bad infestation of them, you can take away the top inch of soil from that particular plant, replace it with new clean soil, and watch your plants grow. One of the questions was, can ferns grow indoors? And the answer is absolutely, but they are a little more challenging than some of our other houseplants. Not only do they like bright indirect light, but they love moisture, and they love moisture a little bit more. You hear us talk about houseplants and watering a lot, and we lecture you about not overwatering. In the case of ferns, they want consistent moisture and good humidity. And if you've had trouble with ferns before, start with the easy guys. Anything in the swordford family, that's going to be the Nephrolepis family, are super easy. They need that bright light and consistent moisture, but they are a little bit more forgiving. When you move into kind of the moderate range of ferns, you get into the lace ferns and the button ferns. Those are a little bit more challenging, but still doable. And then you get to the maidenhairs. Everybody loves maidenhair ferns, but you'll notice we don't have those available in our online houseplant shop. They're a challenge for sure as houseplants. Start with the easy ones, move to the more challenging ones, and you can have ferns indoors. So you have plant babies, but you probably also have some fur babies. And we want to make sure that they can work well inside together. So the great news is there are some beautiful indoor plants that are not toxic to our pets. And some of those include the fern family. Lots of ferns are safe for our pets as long as it's a true fern, a Boston sword fern, the button fern, staghorn ferns. There's lots of different fern families. As long as it's a true fern, it's usually safe for your pets. Another type that we call a fern is the asparagus family of ferns. Those are potentially toxic to your pets, so you'd want to avoid those if you do have animals inside. And as far as our other houseplants go, things like calatheas, peperomias, parlor palms, money trees, I'm going to forget some, there's lots on the list. Reference the ASPCA's website. They have a great list of plants that are toxic or are not toxic to cats and dogs. And always be sure to check with your veterinarian if you have a very specific question about your particular pet. So every pet is different, and some pets are more inquisitive than others. So if you do have plants and pets together in your home, one thing you might wonder is, how do I keep my pets from actually chewing on my plants, even when they're pet friendly? So there's a couple of things you can do. The first is kind of a home remedy spray. You could do something like a diluted citrus juice, rosemary oil, even something like citrus peels placed on the top of the plants can deter your pets from getting into those plants. With any kind of a spray, dilute it 1 tablespoon to a gallon of water or so, and always test the leaf first to make sure it's not going to harm those particular leaves. In the case of pets, we have a nursery cat here named Precious, and she almost never gets into any of our plants except for the catnip. And so if you do have a pet that's getting into your plants a lot, consider giving them an option like cat grass or catnip so that they can kind of get their curiosity out, and maybe they'll leave some of your nicer plants alone. If they're getting into the soil of your plants, put pebbles or decorative stones over the top of the pots. That'll keep the pets from getting into the dirt, maybe even keep a few of the odors that might be attracting them down, and hopefully your plants and your pets can live together. So sometimes you'll find brown tips on the leaves of your houseplants, and that's okay. We can figure out why that's happening, and then we can try to correct it so that the new leaves come out a little better. The first thing to know is, why are those tips turning brown? And usually it's because the plant can't replace the water that it is losing to the air quickly enough. And the leaf tips are the last to get water in the plant because water goes, of course, from the roots to the main part of the plant, to the stems, to the leaves, and finally to those leaf tips. So the first thing to check is that you're consistently watering your plants. We do want to let most of our houseplants dry a little bit in between, but we don't want them to go so long dry that they can't get the water that they need. The second thing is to make sure that the humidity is decent in the area that you have your houseplants. Cluster plants together to increase humidity, use a humidity tray, or mist them occasionally. When the air is really, really dry, that pulls the water out of those leaves even more quickly and can cause that tip burn, especially on humidity-loving plants like calatheas. The third thing can be chemical issues. This can be from fertilizer and over-fertilizing. Make sure that when you are fertilizing a plant that you do it based on the directions of the product you're using, and do it consistently. Don't overdo it. More is not better in that case. And chemicals can also hide in our water. Depending on your water source, there can be salts that build up in the soil over time. A symptom of that can be white rings on a saucer or on your pot when the water dries after you've watered a plant. So if you see that, salts may be building up in the soil as well, and that can cause brown tips on the leaves. To correct that, you can either soak the plant really well, just one time when it needs water, put it into the sink and allow that water to really flush out any of the salts in there. Or if the plant's been in a particular pot for a while, it may be time for a repot. So check through watering, humidity, or chemicals, see which one applies to your situation, correct it, and hopefully we'll have some beautiful new leaves coming out without those brown tips. So what do you do if you find spider mites on your plants? The first thing is not to get discouraged. Insects of all sorts are a natural part of the world, and they're gonna find their way to your houseplants at some point. The good news is we can treat it. So first you want to look for signs of spider mites. The first thing is, are leaves turning a lighter color? And in this case, we're not looking for yellow, which might be a sign of fertilizer issues. We're looking for a light brown or a light gray color. If you see that, look underneath the leaf. Now we're going to look for the little web-like structures that spider mites make. That is pretty well visible to the naked eye, while the bugs themselves are pretty tough to see. If you see those webs, or you just feel like there's some evidence, there's one little test you can do. Take a blank sheet of paper and a leaf that you think might have the spider mites, and tap the leaf kind of vigorously onto that blank sheet of paper. If you see a few dust particles fall, and you may see the spider mites crawling around. And of course, that's a sure sign that there's spider mites on your plant. But we can treat it, don't worry. Get rid of any of the really, really bad leaves, and that's going to start moving that spider mite population out and away from your plants. Of course, isolate your plant away from some of the others that you may have so that it doesn't spread to the other plants. Clean the plants off a little bit. So get rid of the really bad leaves, but then also clean any of the undersides, any of the webs that you can visually see, get those out of there. And again, that will start to reduce that spider mite population. And then our go-to spray, of course, is neem oil. So we're gonna spray our plants twice a week with a solution of neem oil, tops and bottoms of the leaves, and that will slowly treat those spider mites and allow your plant to thrive and be healthy again. So calathea, the queen of houseplants, but also a little bit challenging sometimes. We're going to do a video in the future with some more details about taking care of your calatheas, but here we'll give you a few tips. Humidity. Calathea love humidity, and the brown tips on those leaves are often because the humidity is too low. And then consistent watering. We even noticed here in our greenhouse that our calatheas were not doing as well. We increased the watering a little bit, and it made all the difference in them getting consistent moisture. So while for some houseplants we'll say let them completely dry out and then water, with your calatheas you're going to water them just as they dry out. They want consistent moisture, not soggy, but consistent moisture to keep them happy. And plenty of indirect light, but nice and bright, and that will keep them happy. If you've had trouble with calatheas, I recommend starting with one that we call either the peacock plant or the Makuyana calathea. Those leaves are almost always pretty. They don't get the same kind of brown tips as some of the more challenging ones like your pinstripe, beauty star, and of course white fusion. So again, we'll do a video in the future where we cover some of the different calathea varieties and how to make them all look beautiful.